Let's start by taking a look at the day's headlines. The power of nature. Heavy downpours dump up to 75 millimeters of rain in a single hour on parts of Seoul and Korea's central region last night, causing widespread flooding and triggering road closures. Are the first cracks appearing? U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis warns North Korea that joint South Korea-U.S. drills may restart if the North does not make progress on denuclearization. Plus, hitting the mark, 3 more archery golds for South Korea at the 2018 Asian Games in Indonesia. We have all the latest from Jakarta and Palembang. So let's start with the extreme weather that slammed South Korea's central region last night. During an hour of intensely strong downpours, 75 millimeters of rain lashed Seoul and its surrounding areas. If you're watching us in Korea, you'll certainly need your umbrella, and a rain jacket and rain boots are probably advisable, as forecasters are warning that more of the same could be in store today as well. Kim Hyo-sun starts us off.
Heavy downpours flooded streets and homes in South Korea's central and southern regions on Tuesday night. Cars were half submerged on flooded roads, and facilities near rivers were completely flooded. Store owners tried their best to prevent damages as water gushed into the ground floor of their buildings, but there wasn't much they could do to stop it. While no major damage or casualties were reported, the flooding affected thousands of homes.
We blocked the bathroom door with towels. The water kept flowing into the living room through the floor.
According to the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters, nearly 500 cases of sewer overflows were reported across Seoul as of 9 p.m. on Tuesday. Major roads along the Han River were also blocked due to flood concerns. Flood warnings were issued around major streams in Seoul, where heavy rain advisories were issued, including the surrounding Gyeonggi-do province and northern Gangwon-do province. Authorities are urging people to watch out for possible damage, as heavy rain is forecast to continue through Wednesday. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
So let's get a further check on the weather from our Lee Ji-han, who's standing by at the Weather Center. Ji-han, it's been a heck of a summer here in Korea. We've endured a record-breaking heat wave that seemed to last an eternity, a typhoon, and now this torrential rainfall, which was especially intense last night. Myself and other viewers in Korea need to know, are we going to see a repeat of yesterday's downpours again today?
Well, Mark, indeed, first of all, the summer of 2018 will be remembered as a brutal one for sure. And to get back to your question, unfortunately, it could pour down as heavily as yesterday. And especially those of you watching in the northern parts of Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces, and that includes Pocheon and Cheollon counties, could see downpours of up to 250 millimeters. And Seoul is forecast to see 80 to 150 millimeters of precipitation until tomorrow. And rain will start to pick up in the afternoon here in the capital. And right now we are seeing heavy rain pour in the northern parts of Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces. Rain is falling at a rate of 60 to 100 millimeters an hour in some spots. And heavy rain warnings remain in place for those regions, with heavy rain alerts due to expand to more regions today. Meanwhile, southern regions will be very much like summer today, with a heat wave advisory in some parts, including Daegu and Gwangju. Highs in Daegu and Gyeongju will be at 34 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Seoul and Chuncheon will be a lot breezier, topping out at 28 and 27 degrees respectively, along with torrential rainfall. And of course, heavy rain could cause some traffic chaos, so drive with extra caution. Stay safe, and that's the weather update for now.
The United States has strongly hinted that its joint military drills with South Korea could soon be back on. The allies decided to put the exercises on ice earlier this year, but that could be about to change. Eason Jae with the details.
U.S. Secretary of Defense James Mattis says while no decisions have been made about joint military exercises with South Korea for next year, the U.S. military also has no plans to suspend them. Speaking during a news conference at the Pentagon on Tuesday, Mattis says the suspension of the drills this past summer was a good faith gesture to North Korea, but it was not open-ended. The comments come at a delicate time for negotiations between Washington and Pyongyang after President Trump scrapped a meeting between top officials from both countries. At their summit in Singapore in June, President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un agreed in broad terms to work toward the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. However, North Korea has given no indication that it's willing to give up its nuclear weapons unilaterally, as the Trump administration has demanded. Last week, North Korean officials even reportedly warned U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo that denuclearization talks are at risk of falling apart. Mattis also defended the Trump administration's approach to North Korea during the press conference, saying the U.S. knew very clearly that it was going to be a long and challenging effort. The traditional U.S. calendar for major military exercises does not pick up until next spring, which gives diplomats and military planners time. The calendar hits a high point every spring with the Full Eagle and Max Thunder drills, which takes months to plan. The Max Thunder air combat exercise earlier this year led Pyongyang to issue threatening statements, which nearly derailed the June summit between Kim and Trump. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, amid a rocky patch between the United States and North Korea, the U.S. Secretary of State has released his own take on his recently cancelled trip to Pyongyang, and it seems like North Korea will have to put in more effort towards denuclearization to get Washington on board for further negotiations. Lee Ji-won with more.
The U.S. stands ready to engage when it is clear that North Korea is prepared to deliver on the commitments it made at the June 12 Singapore summit to completely denuclearize. This is U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's take on the current situation following the cancellation of his fourth trip to Pyongyang. It was shared by the department's spokesperson Heather Nauert at a briefing on Tuesday. Pompeo's statement went on to say that the world is united behind the need for North Korea to fulfill that commitment and that members of UN Security Council have voted to call upon North Korea to abandon all nuclear weapons. He said the final fully verified denuclearization of Pyongyang is the world's goal, and the world is looking forward to North Korea's compliance with the resolutions for a brighter future for its people. This comes after a Washington Post report claimed that Trump canceled Pompeo's trip due to a belligerent letter from a senior North Korean official, which convinced the president that the planned visit would not be successful. When asked if the secretary spoke to his North Korean counterparts after the cancellation, Nauert did not confirm it. A reporter referring to the department's earlier comments that there can be no progress on inter-Korean relations without progress on denuclearization asked if the U.S. is going to ask South Korean President Moon Jae-in to cancel his planned meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un next month. Nauert quoted President Moon and said that those things have to take place and that the U.S. continues to have good, frank discussions with its ally. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's presidential office insists the inter-Korean summit set for September in Pyongyang is not affected by the Trump administration's decision to cancel Mike Pompeo's trip to North Korea. The top office's spokesperson says the summit will go ahead regardless and stressed the greater importance of holding the event. The presidential security advisor spoke to lawmakers at the National Assembly regarding this matter as well. Jong Il-yong explained that though Pompeo's trip was cancelled, Pyongyang and Washington have displayed a will to continue dialogue, and talks between the two sides should resume soon. Now, it's been reported that North Korea and Japan held secret talks in Vietnam last month without informing the United States. The Washington Post reports that talks were held in July between the head of Japan's Cabinet Intelligence and Research Office and Kim Song-hae, the North's senior official in charge of reunification. While the report explained senior U.S. officials expressed irritation Tokyo did not provide information about the meeting, it added Japanese officials acknowledged they cannot solely rely on the U.S. to solve the issue of Japanese nationals abducted by the North in the 1970s and 80s. Meanwhile, a Japanese tourist who was detained in the North was sent home on Tuesday. The man, who's believed to be a video journalist, was reportedly detained for filming a military facility in Nampo, a city located near Pyongyang. Japan is once again making false claims to South Korea's Dokdo Island. The cabinet has adopted its annual defense white paper, which states Tokyo has unresolved territorial issues regarding what it calls the Northern Territories and Korea's easternmost islets, which it named Takeshima. Japan has been making the misguided claim in such a manner since 2005. Seoul's Foreign and Defense Ministries strongly appealed and urged Japan to immediately correct the phrase and stop such distortions. The Foreign Ministry also called in the Deputy Chief of Mission at the Japanese Embassy to lodge a formal complaint. The South Korean government wants to raise the country's national budget by nearly 10% next year. A substantial portion will go towards supporting the administration's job creation drive, as well as bridging the widening wealth gap. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
South Korea's Ministry of Economy and Finance said Tuesday that it wants to actively deal with the country's structural issues and pursue expansionary fiscal measures to boost job creation as well as future innovative growth. It says government spending in 2019 will increase by nearly 10% from this year to $424.2 billion. That's the highest level since 2000, excluding 2009, when South Korea was struggling due to the aftermath of the global financial crisis. The ministry expects next year's gross income to amount to nearly $434 billion, up by some 8% from this year. Despite pursuing expansionary measures, the ministry says it's likely to have a limited impact on South Korea's fiscal balance and government debt due to improvements in the country's tax revenue, which the government tallied at nearly $15 billion in June.
Following increases in tax revenue, the government plans to increase expansionary fiscal spending to boost the number of jobs, revitalize the economy, and improve the livelihoods of the public.
The lion's share of next year's budget, around $146.3 billion, is to be injected into boosting the health, welfare, and labor sectors, while nearly $64 billion is set aside for the education sector. The ministry has also increased the amount of state research and development for future core technologies, as well as boosting the platform economy, an ecosystem which depends on the internet, computation, and data. That's been raised to $18.4 billion, up more than $500 million from this year. The Ministry of Trade and Industry and Energy says it plans to increase its budget to around $7 billion next year, nearly 12% more than its budget for this year. This as the ministry is seeking to effectively deal with trade protectionist measures, convert South Korea to safe and clean energy, and strengthen investments for sectors related to innovative growth. The budget proposal is to be submitted to the National Assembly later this week for approval. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, the South Korean government's economic policies have been slammed by opposition lawmakers in the National Assembly. On Tuesday, they said it was time to go back to the drawing board because they just aren't working. The ruling party insists patience is needed for the measures to bear fruit. Kim Min-ji reports.
Officials from South Korea's presidential office were in the hot seat for questioning at the National Assembly on Tuesday as rival lawmakers locked horns over the government's signature income-led growth policies. Opposition parties criticized the policies, stressing the need for a revision or even a change in direction, as recent economic data have been dismal. They said the money pumped in hasn't translated into quality job growth, and the livelihoods of low-income households have gotten worse.
The government's policies are aimed at increasing the income of low-income households and spurring investment and job creation at companies. But you do admit that it's not working, don't you?
Our government is trying to ease the polarization issue by adopting the income-led growth policy. There are parts that have gotten better and areas that need improvement.
However, the ruling Democratic Party of Korea defended the policies, saying the matter is something that needs to be dealt with patience, adding that they can't blame the policies when the administration has only been in office for just over a year. Rather, they said the government's initiative should be seen as a long-term plan and more about reforming the country's economic fundamentals.
The way I see it, this income-led growth strategy is aimed at a much-needed structural reform of the Korean economy. Previous administrations have tried to do it, and so are we. It's not something rival parties should be bickering over.
The policies are aimed at boosting domestic demand. What we are pushing for is a shift in economic paradigm. We are not implementing policies for short-term economic revitalization or temporary job growth.
When asked whether the presidential office has any plans to scrap its controversial special activity funds, the presidential chief of staff said that it's being cut over 30% on year, and the remaining portion is a must-need budget for the president's diplomatic and security agendas. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, a probe carried out by the Korea Consumer Association has found the engine control unit software is to blame for the numerous cases of BMWs bursting into flames here in South Korea. This goes against what the German automaker has insisted. It says the fault is in its exhaust gas recirculation hardware module. The investigation group claims BMW has updated its engine control unit software, which has enhanced its engine performance and fuel efficiency, but it has also put its vehicles at higher risk of fire. The association, comprised of experts from the legal and auto sectors, has been carrying out its own independent investigation. The Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport has called for a fresh probe to look into all the possible causes of the fires. So let's give you the latest from Jakarta and Palembang, the host cities for the 2018 Asian Games. And South Korean archers won 3 golds on Tuesday, taking Team Korea's gold medal haul to 32. Our Won Jong-hwan has more on that and the rest of the day's action.
South Korea once again proved they are the powerhouse of archery, wrapping up the archery competition with 3 more gold medals on Tuesday. In the men's individual recurve final, world number 1 Kim Woo-jin defeated teammate Yoo Seok for the gold. The women's and men's compound teams followed up with gold medals of their own. South Korea ended the archery campaign on a winning note, grabbing 3 golds from the final 3 events, but the overall feeling was disappointment. That's because the archery squad had been aiming to win 8 golds, but only ended up winning 4. On the cycling track, Na-eun became the first South Korean athlete at this year's Asiad to scoop 3 gold medals with her victory in the women's team pursuit track cycling. Na had previously won 2 road cycling events, the individual road race and time trial. She could add another gold medal at the women's Madison event on Friday. Meanwhile, South Korea won the silver medal in the men's team table tennis event, losing 3-0 to China in the final. China has now won the men's team gold in 7 straight Asian Games, and South Korea has been the silver medalist in all of them. In baseball, 2-time defending champions South Korea hammered Hong Kong 21-3 on Tuesday to advance to the next round. South Korea will play back-to-back day games as it will face Japan on Thursday and then China on Friday. The top 2 nations will clash in Saturday's gold medal game. In terms of the medal standings, South Korea is still in 3rd place behind Japan and is unlikely to achieve its original target of 65 gold medals with less than 5 days of the Asian Games remaining. Won Jong-hwan, Arirang News.
Now, Russia will hold its biggest war games since the Cold War. The military exercise is scheduled for next month and will also involve the Chinese and Mongolian armies. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Adam. So, Adam, what more do we know about these drills?
Well, Mark, the War Games are being called Vostok 2018, which translates to East 2018, and will be held in central and eastern Russia. Moscow's defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, says it will involve almost 300,000 troops, tens of thousands of tanks and armored vehicles, more than 1,000 military aircraft, and 2 of Russia's naval fleets, not ships, fleets. The 5-day exercise starting September 11th will be Moscow's biggest military maneuver since the Cold War drill in 1981. It comes at a time of heightened tensions between Russia and the West. Moscow is concerned about what it says is an unjustified build-up of the NATO military alliance on its western flank. NATO says it has strengthened its forces in Eastern Europe to fend off potential Russian military action after Moscow's annexation of Crimea 4 years ago. NATO said it would monitor the upcoming military exercise. In regards to the participation of Chinese forces, a Kremlin spokesperson said it showed Beijing and Moscow were cooperating in all areas. China's defense ministry said it was taking part to enhance military coordination with Russia, but said the drills would not target any third party. Vostok 2018 will serve as a show of Russia's military muscle at a time when President Vladimir Putin is putting military modernization as a priority. US President Donald Trump is taking aim at Google, saying the company's news service is, quote, rigged against him. President Trump says the existing system is biased in favor of stories from left-wing news outlets, adding that 96% of Google News results for Trump were from left-wing outlets, which he described as very dangerous. Google denies Trump's claims, saying its search results are free from political bias. However, President Trump's economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, told reporters that the White House was taking a look at Google. He added they would do some sort of investigation and some analysis without providing further details. China is moving to end its decades-long policy of limiting the number of children that couples can have. Beijing already loosened its so-called one-child policy in 2016 by allowing Chinese couples to have 2 children amid a drop in the workforce. However, concerns have also grown over an aging population and a dropping birth rate, and the Chinese government now looks set to further relax the law. A social media post by a state-run newspaper showed a draft civil code that drops all content on family planning. However, any revisions to the civil code will be submitted to China's parliamentary meeting in 2 years' time. There's been a bit of a buzz in New York's Times Square as a swarm of bees invaded a hot dog stand, forcing authorities to cordon off the nearby area. The bee swarm instantly became the main attraction at the Manhattan tourist destination, with hundreds lining up, though at a distance, to take a photo or video.
Literally the craziest thing I've seen. And I'm allergic to bees, so I want to see it but keep my distance away from it.
It's fantastic that they should develop here in an atmosphere like this.
It's a bit scary. It's scary. What's it doing in the middle of town? I mean, they can't really produce any honey up there, so we're in trouble.
Eventually, a beekeeper did arrive on the scene to suck up the bees with a special vacuum. It wasn't immediately clear where the bees came from or if anyone was stung.
Well, that's all we have for now. Do stay tuned to Arirang TV, and we'll have your next newscast that's coming up for you at noon Korea time with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. So until then, goodbye.
Women who dive into the sea without an oxygen tank to collect shellfish are haenyeo, or the female divers of Korea. All they use are taewak for breathing, mangsari for holding the shellfish, and gakkori and pitchang, which they use to work underwater. These vital instruments have been passed down from one generation of haenyeo to the next over the course of 1,000 years. With the shellfish they collect by diving at least 10 mm below the surface more than 100 times every day, they have put food on the table for their families. They do not catch any juveniles, however, and this is a promise they have made to coexist with marine life. The senior divers teach the juniors the necessary diving skills and traditional rites for safety and an abundant catch. The women who hold their breath as they wrestle against the strong, fierce waves are haenyeo, the female divers of Dokdo Island.
Arirang TV's brand new series Now will give you a glimpse of everyday life in Korea through a fresh, up-close and personal perspective. What are some of the hottest and trendiest places in Korea, and what do